Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. It's Dr. Usman today. Sorry for being late. Just let me know that can you hear me, please? Can you hear? Hear? Just answer on it. Can you hear me, please? Type the message if you can hear me, please. Anyone? Okay, that's great. Adnan, thanks very much. So here today, the topic of the lecture is the mixed connective tissue disease. But I will little bit start with the how to approach a patient with the arthritis, and then we'll go how we can diagnose and how we can manage it. I'm trying to do the full screen, but I'm not successful at the moment. So hopefully it will be coming soon. So the fundamental question is the in rheumatology or in all is the whether the patient has arthralgia or arthritis. So that is the most important question. If you sort out this question or address this question, your life will be very easy to diagnose the rheumatology or the rheumatoid arthritis. So here is the picture of a knee joint. Here there is a soft tissue around that. It's a femur, this is the tibia, and there is the synovial membrane here, and this is the synovial cavity. So predominantly in inflammatory arthritis, there is a synovial inflammation, which is the main culprit. Then along with that, there will be our tendons and the bursas, the muscles, bone, joint capsule, and all this. And it depends upon because in arthralgia or if patient can have the pain along the tendon side, along the bursa side, or anywhere around the muscle. But in arthritis, there will be an inflammation inside the synovial membrane, and there will be a release of the cytokines, chemokines, and inflammatory mediators that will be causing this culprit. So here is the joint and here is the periarticular. So what we say normally that if someone has the inflammation of the inflammatory arthritis, he will be having the inflammation over here. But if someone has arthralgia, that can be a periarticular, that is around the joint. So what are the signs and symptoms of the inflammatory arthritis? As we know that there will be a joint pain and tenderness. There will be a joint swelling, there will be early morning stiffness, there will be loss of function, like patient cannot make a fist or cannot do the routine activity, particularly females, as household female, they will not be able to make a breakfast or will not be able to use the kettle tea and the pan for that because of the pain in the then there will be some signs that what are those that the joint will be warm, red, or patient can have a fever. These symptoms we can call constitutional symptoms. That are those are the fever, loss of appetite, tiredness and fatigue, aches and pains in the body, and sometimes you feel feverish as well. So joint swelling and the early morning stiffness, they are the two main symptoms in the rheumatology. If you find out that there is a swelling in the joint and there is an early morning stiffness for 1 hour, so that is a pathognomonic feature of the inflammatory arthritis. So you have to address this. So morning stiffness in arthralgia and arthritis. So normally what happens that these are the symptoms. This is the healthy people. Then there is arthralgia. In that there is a value of morning stiffness. Stiffness to discriminate between arthritis and arthralgia. This is the latent cohort. Then there are rotator cohort. There are other cohort. Then the value of honesty to differentiate rheumatoid arthritis from other form of pulmonary arthritis. For example, reactive arthritis, osteoarthritis, these are. Then the patient with the distinct. So as the duration of the morning stiffness is more, there are more chances that he has an inflammatory arthritis. If someone has an early morning stiffness of 30 minutes, so it may he may not have this inflammatory arthritis. He may have simply osteoarthritis. But if someone has a stiffness in the joints, making a fist cannot use his hand for more than 1 hour, he definitely has inflammatory arthritis.
सबके दिमाग खराब हुए
causes of arthralgia, vitamin D deficiency, hepatitis C infection, viral infection. These are on the top in Pakistan. So anyone who comes with arthralgia, always think about viral infection, mainly vitamin D, hepatitis C, viral infection, then thyroid, no, hypothyroidism or hypothyroidism, bursitis, tendinitis, fibromyalgia. So these are the tendinitis and all this, and hypothyroidism is again the main culprit. So as you know that we divide the arthritis. So what it is it a monoarthritis? Is it a polyarthritis? Is it oligoarthritis? So for the monoarthritis, the cause first of all rule out septic arthritis. Then think about septic arthritis that will be only single joint involvement. If there is more than one joint involvement, the septic arthritis will be on the lower side. Then gout or pseudo gout will be in again in that systemic arthritis, can be reactive arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, sarcoid, and rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis as well. So I will not go into the details of these that as we have I think the lectures on that. Polyarthritis, what are the main causes for the polyarthritis? On the top of the list is rheumatoid arthritis, then systemic lupus erythematosus. After that, psoriatic arthritis. You have to differentiate between these. So it depends upon the onset of the symptoms, depend upon the joint involvement, then the distribution of the joint, early morning stiffness again, and which is what we call it, cohort of the joints that involved, are the cluster of the joint involved. For example, is it the MCP or PIP joint, or is it the DIP joint? Or is it a small joint or then you will look at additional associated symptoms which are related to all these. For example, rheumatoid arthritis, you don't see many rashes. But in SLA, you see the rash as well. You see the sinusitis as well. You patient they present with the fever. But in psoriatic arthritis, they present predominantly with the rash, and they have been seen by the dermatologist before. Then the writer disease, reactive arthritis. So this is the list for the polyarthritis. Then there is a migratory arthritis. Again, in that there is a rheumatic fever, bronchococcemia, meningococcemia, viral SLE, and acute leukemia. So this is the for the migratory arthritis. So history is very important. There is no substitute to the history in the diagnosis of rheumatic diseases. Because I used to say the diagnostic tests are the biomarkers, are the blood tests which you request, they will not give you the diagnosis. The diagnosis lies in the history. So as we go more question to the patient, you will get the diagnosis. So first of all, see the age. Less than 30, rheumatoid arthritis, SLE, ankylosing spondylitis, and reactive arthritis is common. In between 30 to 50, rheumatoid arthritis, systemic sclerosis, and gout. More than 50, then osteoarthritis, pseudo-gout, or polymyalgia. So these are. So at any age group, psoriatic arthritis and endopathic arthritis will be there. So this is rheumatoid arthritis and SLE. Particularly, they are very common in the female and in the childbearing age, and similarly ankylosing spondylitis. We do see in the elderly group, but they are not as common. So in the female, SLE, rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, systemic sclerosis, and AS common, polymyalgia rheumatic common in both, but it's predominantly in male. So male to female is psoriatic arthritis is more common in male, and thyropathic is more common in male, and pseudo-gout is more common in male. So if someone comes, a female patient, young female patient come to you, always think about SLE first, then rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis in the middle age, not in the younger age at all. Then ankylosing spondylitis are clear. So again, the male no doubt and the reactive arthritis is common. So if does this patient has a fundamental again question is critical arthritis or if someone has critical arthritis, then the top of the list will be rheumatoid arthritis, SLE, and systemic sclerosis. If asymmetrical osteoarthritis and if non-joint asymmetrical osteoarthritis. If someone has a DIP joint involvement, he will be having osteoarthritis or psoriatic arthritis. DIP joint does not involve in rheumatoid arthritis and SLE. In your question, if anyone write down the DIP joint involvement, always think about RASLE or systemic symptoms. And again, if someone has a MCP or PIP, RA or SLE, if there is a first MTP joint in the foot, the joint with the first big toe, then there will be gout or osteoarthritis. So if someone has a spinal involvement, rheumatoid arthritis, SLE is out, and osteoarthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, psoriatic arthritis, reactive arthritis, there will be. There is a very beautiful diagram in your book chapter in Davidson where you can differentiate these things. But the main the differentiating point is this will be MCP and BIP joint involvement in MCP and rheumatoid arthritis, especially in BIP joint psoriatic arthritis. And if someone gets the spinal involvement, then think of ankylosing spondylitis, psoriatic arthritis, and reactive arthritis. So, pain characteristics. The pain in the joint which is aggravated by the motion, that is a mechanical pain, that is not an inflammatory pain. So if it is relieved by the movement, by the activity, it means it is an inflammatory arthritis. It is not a degenerative disease, or it is not a mechanical problem. It is not osteoarthritis. If it's less than 6 weeks duration, viral arthritis, systemic rheumatic disease may present with them. But if it's more than 6 weeks, then it's not viral arthritis. It's always nearly systemic rheumatic disease. So morning stiffness, as I said, that if it's more than 1 hour, rheumatoid arthritis, PMR, or inflammatory arthritis, is more than 30 minutes or less than 1 hour, it's osteoarthritis. So, so associated systemic. So what will be those? So that will be again, as I told you earlier on, that multi-system involvement. You will look at that, and it's a picture for the early morning stiffness again to show you that. See here, in rheumatoid arthritis, it will be around 60 minutes. Then it will be SLE will be 60 minutes. But as we go reduces down, then sarcoidosis, RS3P, this is the recurrent synovitis, critical this arthritis with the pitting edema. This is the called inflammatory OA, reactive arthritis, spondylitis, peripheral arthritis, and distal arthritis. So it reduces with the time. So inflammatory arthritis, the early morning stiffness is more common, or if the duration is more prolonged in SLE or in the rheumatoid arthritis. So physical examination. As I say, that a normal person is an individual who has not been examined sufficiently. So in the rheumatology, history and examination will give you 90% diagnosis. If you missed from the history and examination, it will be different. So what will we look at in that? There will be a soft tissue swelling, there will be warm and infusion, and it will be these will be the signs of inflammation. If there is a passive movement, it's normal, but it increases, it reduces with the active movement, bursitis, tendinitis, and it also in the synovitis. So predominantly, you will look for the signs of inflammation to diagnose for that. And if someone has a tenderness, reduction in the joint movement, loss of function, swelling with that, it means he has inflammatory arthritis. So these are the few pictures of early inflammatory arthritis. And so look at that. Based on that, look at these joints. This one. Okay, as compared to this one. So see here, looks like that there is a swelling over there, but there is an adhesion as well. So this shows that it will have the non-swelling. Sorry. Now, again on the physical examination, you will look for the fever. So what are these? To look for the fever and the eye diseases, because now there is a systemic involvement. Fever can be because of infection, reactive arthritis, RA, SLE, crystal abuse, but not. So to differentiate from the what we call it, the reactive arthritis or psoriatic arthritis, so there is always look for the Achilles tendon insertion. There can be Achilles tendonitis, and it is very common. People most of the time they do this. Then there can be a trochanteric bursitis, where there is a greater trochanter because there is a trochanteric bursa, and skin manifestation. So all these they will give you a clue for the what we call it enthesitis related or seronegative inflammatory arthritis. Among them is the psoriatic arthritis, reactive arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, and things. Now, as our today's topic is the mixed connective tissue disease or the overlap syndrome. So, what are the question is what are the signs and symptoms of the mixed connective tissue disease? So, I think that the might it has overlapped overlapped this presentation little bit. So this slide I came first actually I will talk about later on, but I will give you a little bit information. So what are the signs of connective tissue disease? First of all is the Raynaud's phenomenon. Always ask the patient about the Raynaud's phenomenon, that the change in color in the cold weather, particularly in winter time, and when he puts the hands in the cold weather. And you can elicit this in the even in the hottest weather as well, because once when there is a vasculopathy which lead to Raynaud's phenomena, it happens in the extreme hot weather as well, like June and July in Pakistan. Then other will be the pulmonary involvement. Always look for that question about the pulmonary disease, like shortness of breath, cough. Okay, and then look for whether he developed at any stage of the fluid in the lung or unfluid fluid. Then there will be inflammatory arthritis, fever, rash. The rash can be, the rash is very generalized. It can occur in infection, it can occur in vasculitis, and it can occur in all the diseases of the connective tissue. So these are the few questions you will have to ask her. Then the sclerodactyly. Sclerodactyly is the thinning of the fingers where there will be involvement of fluid. And you can ask for the GI involvement, and you can ask the ulcers on the tips of the fingertips. That will give you a clue for me. And the renal involvement. If you are suspecting connective tissue disease, always ask for that. Raynaud's phenomena, pulmonary involvement, inflammatory arthritis, fever, rash, scleroderma, GI involvement, and renal involvement. So again, the same thing. Now I will talk about the symptoms of the mixed connective tissue disease or the overlap syndrome. So what is that? As I said earlier, Raynaud phenomena, 100%. So anyone who presents with the overlap syndrome or mixed connective tissue disease, because these terminology overlaps, MCTD and overlap syndrome, it overlaps. So in that there will be a Raynaud's phenomenon history of that occurs in every patient. If someone does not give the history of that, then think about that whether he has mixed connective tissue disease or not, or whether he has a simply overlap syndrome. Then there will be a swollen hand, inflammatory arthritis, pulmonary symptoms. They are very common because a lot of patients who are referred to diagnose a case of mixed connective tissue disease, they are referred from the pulmonologist, and they have a really very great difficulty to diagnose these. So how to diagnose the question with that will be Raynaud's phenomena, if patient has it, swelling of the swollen hand. It's not swelling of the joints, it's the swelling of the full hand. Then inflammatory arthritis, and he has a pulmonary involvement or symptoms or not, and then look for the other signs of connective tissue disease. For example, muscle weakness in myositis, rash, fever, or pleurisy in the SLE, because you do not see the pleural effusion or pleural involvement in myositis, in rheumatoid arthritis, or scleroderma. Then again, you will look for ask for the signs of pulmonary hypertension. Then you will look for rheumatoid arthritis. In scleroderma, there will be thickening of the skin, there will be digital ulcers, there will be esophageal dysmotility and all this. And Sjogren's syndrome, where there will be dryness in the mouth or eyes, or any combination of these symptoms. Because these in overlap syndrome, this one disease overlaps with the other. For example, myositis and SLE can occur together. Rheumatoid arthritis and SLE can occur together. Scleroderma and SLE can occur. Or rheumatoid arthritis can occur. Sjogren's syndrome is the most common which overlaps with these. So there, for example, there is a terminology called rupus. Rupus, RHPUS. Rupus means from the lupus. They said that it's a rheumatoid arthritis and SLE come together, so that is rupus. So in that we call it overlap syndrome. But mixed connective tissue disease is a little bit different entity, and in that there will be Raynaud's phenomenon 100% of the time. then these signs symptoms will be in there. So now comes I will come for the investigation because the symptoms of the inflammatory arthritis, connective tissue disease, they overlap and they are nearly the same. It's sometimes you find it difficult if you're not experienced on how to differentiate. So how will you investigate the CKD patient? First of all, normally what happens here, they do the ANA, anti-nuclear antibody. Then they do the ENA panel. If ENA is positive, they do ENA. ENA is called the acceptable nuclear antigen. In that, there are at least nowadays 20 things in the ENA panel. So you will look for that. I will come back later on to this. Then you will do the urine dipstick to rule out the kidney involvement. If urine dipstick is normal, it means it does not have renal involvement. Then you will do the renal profile. You can do the ANCA because if someone presents with a fever and rash, you are suspecting connective tissue disease, but you have to rule for the what we call vasculitis. Then there will help to collect complement level because this you have to differentiate from the SLE. And the diagnosis test for complement for SLE, you have to consider the complement level, which can be normal in other disease. Then you will do CBC. So these are the, so first the ENA panel, urine dipstick, renal profile, ANCA, complete level, and CBC. CBC will help you to differentiate between whether someone has SLE or not, because there will be anemia, there will be lymphopenia, there will be neutropenia, and thrombocytopenia. That does not occur in any of the other disease. So, what ANA, how ANA will differentiate between mixed connective tissue disease and overlap syndrome and other connective tissue disease. ANA will be in a very high titer in mixed connective tissue disease. That is the pathognomic again feature. And in the ENA, there will be human RNP. If you find a patient who has a referred by the pulmonologist with a complaint of pulmonary symptoms, again with the complaint of joint symptoms, and you did the ANA, if the titer is, for example, normal cutoff value is 1/80. So if someone has a 1/600, 1/1200, 1/5000, always think about mixed connective tissue disease. And when once if someone has a high ANA titer, always request for the ENA because that will help you to differentiate. In the ANA panel, there will be, you look for the RNP system, and it is called the RNP and Smith antibodies. But in that, nowadays, they write it as human RNP or RNP 70. If that is present, it means that patient has been into tissue disease. If it's negative, then you look for the other causes. Then in the mixed connective tissue disease, once the ENA titer is up, you will request for the test CT to find out the pulmonary involvement because there will be what we call it pulmonary fibrosis, the connective tissue disease involving lung fibrosis. Then you can request for the capillaroscopy, though it's not diagnosed. It will help diagnose the condition. Now I will come back to the little bit about the ANA. So once we request for the ANA, what we see, first we will see is it positive or negative, meaning is it present or not. So once it is present, you will look for the type. What is the value? Is it 1/100, 1/320, 1/600, 1/5000? What is it? Then you will look for the pattern because the pattern will give you few clues that what disease can. So there are 4 patterns here. One is the homogeneous pattern. Second is the speckled pattern. Third is the peripheral pattern. Then is the nuclear pattern. And it is the central pattern. That will help you to differentiate between them. In homogeneous, there will be distribution. Homogeneous is speckled, they will come in the same speckled distributed, but all they will be generalized and they will be diffused and little. Peripheral, it will be a picture. Nucleolar, it's like the centromere. So this, if you look at that, what is it the ANA? Does it homogeneous? Does it speckled or peripheral? So it will give you a certain suspicion for the diagnosis. What are those? If someone has a homogeneous pattern, it means SLE is likely. If someone has a speckled pattern, mixed connective tissue disease is very likely. Like likelihood ratio is 100. If someone has a centromere pattern, then SLE. So if I go back to the previous, if someone says that they say the ANA is positive, titer is 1 to 320 and the pattern is homogeneous, think about the SLA. If I saying that the AN is present, but the titer is around 5,000 and it is speckle pattern, it is mixed connective tissue disease. Then centromere is for the limited cutaneous scleroderma or the scleroderma disease. So these are the nuclear and peripheral, they are most of the time they're non-specific as well. So always think about that, look at in the report that if they have given positive, what is the titer? And if someone has a more than 300, 320, the 1 into 320, the titer of the ANA, it is significant. Do not ignore that. Then again, if you have not seen the patient or you could not take a detailed history, call the patient in again take the detailed history. Here is a feature, here is a what we call it diagram which I want to show that how this is the ANA pattern, is the titer in the systemic lupus. It is in the systemic sclerosis. It is in the Sjögren's syndrome. This is in the cutaneous lupus inflammatory myopathy and mixed connective tissue disease. So SL, if you say they are in the negative, it will be very low titer, but then it startly increases. But you see, mainly the titer is in between 160 and in between 640. Most of them. Very few patients they get high titer. But if you look scleroderma again, they have 1 into with this 200 with this 1280, they have 1280, 640. But this in this again still uh, in the low titer systemic sclerosis is present. In Sjögren's syndrome, the highest titer will be in the 1 into 80 or 1 into 60. Above that, ANA titer does not. Cutaneous lupus is the similar. But if you look at the mixed connective tissue disease, the pattern it starts from the 103 and it rises very significantly. Like nearly 100% of the patient or lot of the patient, they if they get this one, so the likelihood ratio for the mixed connective tissue disease will be very high. So here you see some people they can have a low titer of negative, but most of them they do get. But there is none of them they have a lowest titer, highest titer who does not have this tissue disease. So if the titer is very high, always think about mixed connective tissue disease. And if you are suspecting mixed connective tissue, do not think about the low grade. Always think for the high titer. And most of the time it will be above 1280. It can be 5000, it can be 3000, it can be 2000. So that is a diagnostic test for that. So for mixed connective tissue disease, now what are the feature? History of Raynaud's phenomena 1. Then you can see pulmonary involvement 2, hand edema 3. Then you can request the what we call it ANA will be positive and that will be a spectral pattern and the titer will be very high. If someone has these things and then in the ENA you will see UNRNP if it's present or RNP 70, it means that patient has mixed connective tissue disease, it does not have any other condition. So now treatment. Treatment is very straightforward at your level. Because at your level, the most of the rheumatology the diseases they respond to the steroids. So you start the patient of the steroid. Mixed connective tissue disease is a very good drug, a very good disease which is responsive to the steroid, to the low dose steroid. For example, prednisolone 20 milligram. There is normally it comes in the 5 milligram of tablet. So if you start the patient on 20 milligram, 4 tablets in the day, 2 in the morning, 2 in the evening, or 4 in the morning. So that disease is very good responsive to mixed connective tissue disease. But depending upon the if someone gets a Raynaud's phenomena secondary to other connective tissue disease or primary to mixed connective tissue disease, they will respond to the vasodilator drugs. So what are the vasodilators which we use? They are mainly the calcium channel blockers, and then we use the ACE inhibitors as well sometimes. If someone is on beta blocker, so stop the beta blocker and they will give some. Then if someone has a joint involvement, then you're going to start these patients on DMRDs. What are those? They are the methotrexate, hydroxychloroquine, sulfasalazine, diflunomide, and what we call it, Imura. So these are the drugs. These are the 4 or 5 drugs which are used nowadays in every rheumatic disease. So drugs for the rheumatic disease, for the rheumatology, what are which drug is used for which condition? So methotrexate is the drug for the inflammatory arthritis in any of these conditions. If someone has rheumatoid arthritis, if someone has SLA, if someone has mixed connective tissue disease, if someone has a myositis. Now, but if someone, and even for psoriasis as well, but if someone has a reactive arthritis or seronegative arthritis, or he has ankylosing spondylitis with involvement of the peripheral joint, then the first line agent is sulfasalazine. Seronegative means reactive arthritis predominantly, you will start the patient with sulfasalazine, but in all other you will start the patient as
मुझे रख दो
sulfasalazine.
साइड पे.
Then hydroxychloroquine as a drug is the first line agent who has the what we call it SLE. Anyone who is having SLE, any patient, he will be started on hydroxychloroquine. And during pregnancy, you will continue that as well. It reduces the mortality, it reduces the skin rashes, it improves the joints as well. And the the effective treatment is efficacy is in the antiphospholipid syndrome. So then there are the biological agents. Among them, there are huge list of that. One is anti-TNF antibodies, interleukin 1, interleukin 6, interleukin 23, interleukin 17. So there are whole list of that. So just remember their names and what we do. Then there is it is called the T cell therapy as well. Then there is a B cell therapy. With among them is the rituximab and the belimumab, predominantly. Nowadays, there are other agents coming up as well. So these are the predominantly in so mixed connective tissue disease. First line is steroid. Give the steroid. Someone has inflammatory arthritis. Start the patient on
और
methotrexate,
10 दे दो मुझे.
and then give it
ये
for
तो
at
खा
least
लो
6 months or
चार.
1 year, 2 years, depending upon the symptoms. And most of your at your level, they will not be going beyond that because most of the
ओके.
they don't have any idea about that. They have just heard of anti-platelets, but they don't know in detail. The only thing is to start these patients for the screening purposes, you have to do chest X-ray to rule out pulmonary tuberculosis, and for methotrexate to rule out the lung fibrosis. Second will be you will do hepatitis B and C serology. If someone has a hepatitis B and C, they can be reactivated with the biological agents. And if you are suspecting someone has tuberculosis or you want to do it, then think of the B cell therapy. So that's a broader, but the treatment is same everywhere in nearly all the rheumatic diseases. Now, if you have any question, you know, if you have any question, just let me know. Any questions? So time is nearly up. If you don't have any question, then I will head off and just tell me, let me know that how is the corona situation in your area. I think you are all sleepy at the moment, so I would say that sleepy head. Okay, so the time is up. Thanks very much to everyone. No one is interested to ask any question or give any comment. Very good question. That if the methotrexate is not effective, then add on. Do not stop methotrexate. Add the hydroxychloroquine or sulfasalazine. So that means if it's again, you can do single agent, you can do two agents, you can do use three agents. So that the combination therapy is methotrexate plus sulfasalazine plus hydroxychloroquine, or methotrexate plus sulfasalazine, or methotrexate plus hydroxychloroquine. And in some of the patient you can use methotrexate plus methotrexate and the what we call it leflunomide. That is very good drug, but be careful that they will both of these conditions they will raise the liver enzymes. So in that situation, be careful about the raised liver enzymes. Very good question. For how long? Yes, combination therapy. As long as the disease is not under control or it does not go into remission. So your minimum duration will be 2 years. Because in inflammatory arthritis, the erosions occur in the joint up to 2 years, and they are the more significant or more advanced in the first 2 years. So you have to give these patients at least 2 years of methotrexate combination. So this combination will go along, particularly in inflammatory arthritis like rheumatoid arthritis, SLE, scleroderma, mixed connective tissue disease, and all these connective tissue disease. It's a long-term combination. It's not a short-term. So the very good question. Anyone else? So it's 11 o'clock. The time is up. I think might be the other will be waiting for. So thanks very much. Okay, I will close and I will leave the